Welcome back. Another week. Hope you're all well, hope you're sane, being positive. So this week we are choosing to look at downward dog. Some of you may suddenly think, oh, I don't want to do this, I know it's complicated, my wrists won't take it, I can't get my legs straight. None of that needs to be worried about. Some of you may be familiar with downward dog already. If so, skip this, I'll see you next week. Or if you want a refresh, or a different way at looking at it, keep watching. So with downward dog, if you are new to it, unfamiliar or don't do it very often at all, sometimes it's good to have a look at it in a different way, do a little bit of preparation. So the more familiar you become with it, the more practiced you do it, the stronger you become, and the more able you are to move into it from one pose to another, or as a standalone pose yourself. So with anything that is a weight-bearing exercise on the wrists, warming them up, always a good idea. For anybody that tends to be a little bit sensitive in the hands, the wrists, feel that they become weak, can't take pressure there, it is always a good idea to have something to give you a little bit of a chance. So we're going to warm up the wrists, and you can always just opt out and watch. Always a choice. So we're going to stay kneeling, but we're also going to warm up the wrists in an extended child's pose as well, and from that we're going to evolve into our downward dog. So we're not just going to throw ourselves into it without any preparation. So very simply, we're going to place our hands on the floor, fingers open like stars, wrists under the shoulders, so we're gently weight bearing, but the bearing of the weight is mainly taking in the legs and the upper body. And we are very gently going to lean forward and roll back. And as we do this, I want you to feel the weight in the knuckles of the hands and in the base of the palm. We don't need to push into the fingertips. We don't need to apply pressure in the palm of the hand. It's on the external rim of the palm. And when we place our hands down and go onto the mat, we engage the fingertips, which will lift the palms up and balance out the weight of our hands. So let's continue to warm up the wrists. Very simply, you can go at your own pace, go with your breath in, breath out. Very gently, warming the wrists internally and externally. And then we're going to turn them round. And I want you to take your time with this. And if you feel any twinges, remove it straight away. There is no pain in yoga. So if you feel pain, you're forcing yourself, which means you're being in competition. There's no competition, it's just you. So we're going to turn the hands slightly round. So the internal points of the wrist are facing each other, and again, they're going to be under the shoulder. It keeps the shoulder girdle and the arms balanced. There's no risk of injury or damage by doing this. Very gently, rolling forward, coming back, using the hips for the rocking motion so that our wrists are warming up without bearing too much weight. If we suddenly come over, we risk damage at the base of the thumbs, and if we lean back, if we use problems with the scaphoid bone in the wrist, nobody wants that problem at all. So once we've warmed up several times in that direction, we're going to turn the arms round. Now I don't want you panicking if you can't do this. Just go back to facing forward. But if you can, do this. The palms do not need to reach the floor. That is not something that's important. A gentle warm up, lifting the palms away. And by doing this, we're warming up the fingers without applying pressure to the fingers. So very gently, warming them up. Breathing in, breathing out. And when we've had enough of that, we're going to turn the hands the opposite direction so the fingers are then facing in. Again, keep them under the shoulders, and we're going to work forwards and back very steadily and unevenly. Do not jerk or suddenly do urgent movements. That's how we can hurt ligaments, strain tendons, and end up giving ourselves some real problems, which we don't need to do. Our hands are one of our most valuable parts of the body. You injure it, you're going to know for a long time. Okay, so you now feel them maybe a little bit looser. You might feel a little bit more open, particularly at the front or the inner wrist. You might feel nothing at all. That's absolutely fine. Nobody says there is a blueprint. We're all different for a reason. So very gently just circle the wrists several times in one direction, several times in the other, just to balance everything out. And there we go. Now we're going to go to child's pose, but it's going to be extended because that gives us a platform to extend into a low downward dog. So let's come into our child. Heels under bum. Feel the sitting bones, and they are there, so don't panic. They have to be there, it's part of your makeup. We're going to walk the arms forward, and our normal child's pose, we rest the chest over the thighs, we extend the fingers, and we drop the head. Now from this position, we can move into several different poses. We can move ahead into lunge, we can move straight into our tabletop, we can go into many different poses, but this is our launch to downward dog today. So what I want you to do is to walk the fingers forward, then we're opening up the armpits and extending and opening up the back and dropping the shoulder blades into their correct position. And this is a similar position to how your arms are going to be in downward dog. And by having the head between the arms, this is how our head will eventually rest to create that shape. What we're going to do now is we're going to come forward a little bit to extend the arms a bit further, and we're going to tuck the toes and then come back to the thighs. Walk the fingers forward if you've got space, drop the palms and keep the heels underneath but keep the toes tucked. We're now opening the base of the feet and we're starting to activate the ankles, and those 2 points are vital for finding our base with our downward dog as well. So let's just find our position in this. Feel the opening of the shoulders, the extension of the arms. And very gently, just take a couple of breaths. Feel this shape. Allow the shoulders to drop naturally. Don't tighten them. Let the arms drop naturally. And then I want you to just bring the hands in a couple of inches. Come up onto the knees and feel this shape. This, with the arms alongside the ears, is a small, short version of downward dog. So we're now going to push into the hands and push into the feet at the same time. Just lift the feet off, lift the knees off, and this is our crouching dog. Now this may be a real taxing problem, and if it is, bring the knees down and give yourself some time. Working up each position, finding strength. Do not rush, work with your body. Trying again, we're going to lift up. Let's lift the knees a bit higher. So once we've got this shape, you can start seeing a closer variation of downward dog. Knees are bent, feet are on the floor, heels up or down, hands are grounded. Now let's start looking at our foundation. We have our hands shoulder width apart. Gripping our fingertips in, let our hands raise, and that will relieve pressure off the palms, extending and pushing pressure up the arms. Now let's look back at the feet. Our feet need to be hip width apart, at least, to find our steady downward dog. If they are a little bit wider because you have got hip issues, do that. Do what's ever comfortable, okay? Keep those knees bent if your hamstrings are tight. If your legs can't straighten, it is not the end of the world. Do what works for you. Gradually, the more you move, the more you become comfortable in this position, your legs will straighten. And let's find the ground. So looking ahead at our hands, they are shoulder width apart. Looking back between our legs to our feet, finding those hip widths apart. We're now going to look at making this position comfortable. So let's come up onto the tiptoes and bend those knees. By bending those knees, we're going to be able to lift the hips up and then drop the heels as close to the floor as possible, giving our foundation of legs the best
placing. If the knees have to be bent, bend them. It does not matter. If the heels have to be off the floor, do it. I want you to be comfortable and to start with the foundation that works so you can progress in your direction. Now let's look at the arms. If you're feeling pressure in the hands, make sure the middle finger and the thumb are opposite each other and pointing upwards toward the end of the mat. That means that our rotation of our wrist bones and our arm bones are in the right direction. Grip the fingertips down and let the head hang. Let it drape between the arms and just find its space. Now by now you're thinking, I don't want to be in this position any longer. I have been in this position enough. That is fine. Come out of it as slowly and as carefully as you can. But there are a couple of tips you can use to improve your pose. If you think your arms are too short or your legs don't quite reach, you can practice with a block under each hand to expand that practice. They will raise your body up. So let me show you. 2 blocks. And this might completely revolutionise the way you look at the pose. So, let's put our hands on our block. Let's come back, feet tucked, to our extended child's pose. Now this might feel weird, but I want you to grip the block where it's comfortable for you and don't worry too much. Let's look at the transition. Tuck the toes, lift the knees, and straighten or keep the knees as bent as is comfortable for you. And you might suddenly realise the extension of the arm to armpit and the height away from the mat is a very different feeling. Your legs may feel straighter, your hamstrings may feel looser. So work with it and see if it works for you. And if your knees still need to be bent, it doesn't matter. So let's lower that down. And you have another couple of choices. You can do downward dog on the blocks with your feet if you feel that your hamstrings are still too tight. So let's look at that one. You may have to approach it in a different way, but that's absolutely fine. Keep the blocks the same width as your feet would be. So let's turn round and we're going to transition by putting the feet on the blocks first instead of working low. Now this might feel very unfamiliar, but I want you to take time, experiment. You don't know until you try. So walking forward, keeping the knees bent, and let's extend up. And that might be exactly what you needed, just what you wanted, and that length in the leg gives you that perfect opening all along the down of the body, all the way down to the hands. And once you find your downward dog, try and listen to how the body is feeling. Is there a twinge in the lower back? Is there a pull in the back of the legs? Listen, take note, and remember it. If it keeps coming back, it's time for adjustment. It's time to change something so you can reach your downward dog that's meant to be there and accessible for you. So coming down, bending the knees. Let's remove those blocks. Now, downward dog is classed as an inversion because our head is below our heart. So again, we're refreshing the blood flow, the circulation, the oxygenation of our brain, which is invigorating, powerful, rejuvenating. It's a great pause pose too. You may not believe that when you start doing it, but it's a pose that's used as a pit stop during and after intensive work throughout poses, asanas, movements and flows. So once you find your downward dog, if you do, carve it in your own direction. Use it. You can work from it to use it as a starter to open up the body just before you get moving in the day. So let me show you a couple of choices for that.
if you find your downward dog and want to expand on it. So moving into your downward dog, coming up into your shape. You might find eventually you prefer a longer downward dog. Work and take it whatever it feels good to you. So we can walk the dog, bending one knee towards the chest as the other is straightened, opening the calf, extending into the Achilles and the heel, and swapping the legs with breath, doing it quicker or doing it much slower, opening the fascia at the base of the feet as well. And it reaches all the way up to the hamstrings at the top of the glutes. So it starts getting this area working, not just this and this. So what this you can have fun with. It's like running on the spot to some. Excellent for getting blood flow towards the toes, warming up the lower parts of the body and starting to get the heart pumping. We also have a great one that gets a lot of the body working at once. We have a twist, so we turn the feet to one side, we bend the knees to the opposite direction, and we come down as far as we can. And we're feeling an opposing stretch all the way down the ribs, into the hips perhaps, all the way up to the arm, the hand, the wrist, right into the armpit. We come back up, reposition, we turn to the opposite side, and we bend deep again. Fantastic lateral stretch. Wonderful for opening all the way into the side, the digestive system too, into the internal muscles, and by doing this squeeze, we're giving the inside of our body a deserved massage. So, see how you feel about giving those a try once you're confident in your downward dog. In downward dog, or Urdhva Mukha Shavasana as it's also known in Sanskrit, there are many, many choices, variations and adaptions for all of us, just as different as we are. Find one, choose one, pick one, and have fun with whatever you discover. Have a great day. Be well.